Parshas Emor. The Gemara in Yuma, Daf Samach Tes Amid Beis, discusses the historical fact that the members of the Sanhedrin davened for 3 days and 3 nights to destroy the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. And they were successful in that endeavor. And we know the famous Maaseh with Menashe Melech Yehuda, who they were criticizing him for being Oved Avodah Zarah, and he said, if you'd been around in my time, you would pick up the skirt of your outfit and you'd run faster than me to Avodah Zarah. So it was a tremendous Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. However, that wily coyote Yetzer Hara got smart, and he substituted the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah for Lashon Hara. And we are all nichshal, more or less, and almost everyone, in the avera of Lashon Hara and its sidekick and buddy, Rechilos. Rav Olbaum, in the shir that he gave this year on Tazria Mitzorah, discussed tremendous aspects of Lashon Hara, and he emphasized the importance of learning the halachas of Lashon Hara, the Chafetz Chaim and all the other Sfarim, and there are so many of them out there. He said, however, that the fundamental basis of Lashon Hara is a character flaw in our midos. And he quotes a Chovas Halvavos to explain what he was trying to say. He says, in the Chovas Halvavos, it's in Shar Hachniya, Perek Yud. I'm going to translate it in English. They asked one of the Chachamim, what made you, what brought you to greatness? How did you become the leader and the master of your entire generation? And he says, I never met a person that I did not see in him some milah greater than myself. If he was smarter than me, I said, he has greater chachma than I am. If I was smarter than him, I said, he has more Yiras Shamayim than I have. If he was older than me, I said, wow, what is chus? He's got more mitzvahs than me. If he was younger than me, I would say, wow, how lucky he is. He has fewer averos than I have. He always was able to find the goodness and the positive aspect of every single person that he ever met. And he brings down, Rav Olbaum, Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, which is actually a song, he said, and words are, V'sein b'libenu, shenira kol echad, malas chaverenu v'lo chesroinu. That is the introduction to a very powerful story, which I came across in Parshas Emor, in my Sefer Oyser Plois HaTorah. Parshas Emor is Emor al Kohanim. All of the halachas of the Kohanim are mentioned in Parshas Emor, which underscores how vital that midah is of seeing that people around us, if they're not as smart as us, make believe that they are, and they certainly could be much smarter than us. Now, there was a gadol 200 years ago. His name was Levushe Srad. And it's brought down a Maaseh, quoted by the Chassam Sofer, and in the place where the Levushe Srad was a Rav, there was there the Parnis, the head of the community, who was the wealthiest man around, but a tremendous Amoritz. And that happens all the time. The wealthiest man is not necessarily the smartest man. As we know, Parnasa comes from Kadosh Baruch Hu directly, not from our wily business instincts. He became the Rosh of the Kahal, the Rosh HaKahal, through his wealth. And he was a Kohen. Frequently fighting with his spouse, with his wife. Constantly was fighting and bickering with his wife, and as many times as the Rav tried to make shalom with him, didn't help. Constantly fighting with his wife, so much so that he constantly came to the Rav and he says, I want to give her a get. I want to give her a get. I want to get finished with it. And the famous saying is brought down here is Chacham Adif Mi Navi. A wise person, and in this particular case, we're talking about the aspect of Seichel. The Levushe Srad said to the Baal, you're right. You really should give her a get. You should be Megarish her. But right now you can't. It's impossible. Why? Because you're a Kohen, and she's Tameh. And since you have to hand her the get, you can't give it to her because she's in Tumah. So hold off for a little while. And that he did. And the Amos accepted those words, and he went away, and then they made up. They eventually made up. Same thing happened again and again and again. Each time he would come to the Rav to ask him to help him write a get for his wife to be Megarish her. the Rav would put him off and say that she's tamei, and you can't do it because you're a kohen. The Levush Srud moved to Eretz Yisrael, went into Aliyah later in his life, became a Rav, and a Rav Rashi in Tzfas, and another person came in and took his place. I'll use the words that the Otziplos HaTorah uses, and he says, Rav Acher Asher Choshav Asma Kachacham Be'einav V'Azulasa Lehepach. He thought he was a genius, and then his predecessor was not terribly smart. And it comes time, the usher comes to him, he says, I want to be Megarish my wife. And he said, okay. And he sat him down, he wrote him a get, and he was going to write him a get. And the usher, the Parnes, said to him, but how can you do that? It's impossible for me to Megarish my wife because she's not Tahor, she's Tameh. And this second rabbi, whoever he was, started to laugh and was making Letzanus of the Levush Srud. And he immediately performed the Gerushin, and he then wrote a long letter to Levush Srud in Eretz Yisrael to knock off, it was like a kinderspiel, all the things that he had said, Levush Srud, to this Oisher, to this Parnes, and to denigrate him, probably not in a bekavidik way. The Levush Srud received this letter, took the piece of paper, turned it around, and wrote the following on the back: Al tiyeh shoite ezeu chacham harayas hanoilad. Foolish man, who is a chacham? Someone who can see ahead. And he sent back that letter. Not too many days went by, and the roigas of the Ashir dissipated, and he wants to marry his wife. Comes to Rav, he says, I want to marry my wife. He says, you can't. You're a kohen. Kohen cannot marry a grusha. He then became a bitter enemy of this Rav, so much so that he hounded him so much so that he had to leave town. And he left town because of his short-sightedness and his lack of ability to realize that what he had done. And for this, it's brought down in Pirkei Avos. The Sefer says, Chachamim hizaharu b'divrechem. Please be careful what you think. Think carefully what you do, and you should not be mavazeh, and you should not make fun of anyone, and certainly be very careful before an Amoritz. Treat everyone with respect. It's incumbent upon us to take the moral lesson from this story. And it's a wise suggestion. Anytime you meet anyone, you have to think of them as at least as smart as you, and frequently smarter. A good lesson to learn for life, and one that pays great dividends for all of us. Good Shabbos. The whole first half of the Osa Plus Torah on Parshas Emor are all various stories about Kohanim. Can a Kohen go into Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's kever? Very interesting kasha. We had this kasha when we were in Eretz Yisrael just a few days ago. Can Kohanim go into Marsa Machpelah? It's a shayla he has in the Sefer over here. And he comes down very strong. I was flabbergasted. Very strong that Kohanim should not go into Marsa Machpelah. He brings it down in the shame of the Minchas Elozar. The Munkacher Rebbe came out against Kohanim going to Marsa Machpelah. And the famous Rebbe from Shiniva, Rabbi Cheskel Shraga, Ba'atzmai, writes in these words, the Torah tells us we have to be careful with the Kohanim that should not become Tameh. And I found myself mechuyev in this action to tell everybody. It's my chiv to tell everybody that people are being mekel. You're allowed to go to Kohanim into Kivrei Tzadikim. It's a big mistake. That's the Rebbe from Shiniva, as you know, from the sons of Rav, his son-in-law, I believe. So all of these halachos about Kohanim are all very clearly delineated in Parshas Emor, and it brings on a very large section. If you're a Kohen, I think it would be worth your while, great while, to sit down with the Sefer and look it through. It's really quite enlightening.